Hello, and welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Knowledge or Nonsense. And I am your host, Chimere CeCe Curry. We have an awesome episode planned for you guys today. I cannot wait. We are going to be here talking with Jamelle Ross and Tammy Heacock, and we're going to be talking about emergency preparedness and crisis management. It is going to be awesome, you guys. I cannot wait, right? So, look, let me give you a little history because I always start with that. I met Jamelle last year for the very first time. Her and actually our producer Sharon were speaking at the conference. And when I tell you it was something that you do not forget, it was absolutely amazing. So I was happy that I got a chance to see them, meet them, etc. So I'm super excited to be joining her today. We also have Tammy, who I have not met before, but I know that she speaks, and I didn't get to see her last year, but I'm so excited to have her on the show today, guys. So super happy, super excited. But before we get into everything, of course, I want to give you guys a chance to go ahead, like, subscribe, join in, get a friend, grab a hand, and of course, leave your name in the comments so that we can show you some love for showing up and supporting us, you guys. So we're going to take a minute and we'll be back with Jamelle Ross as well as Tammy Heacock. In the meantime, take a break, like, subscribe. Thanks. Hello, ladies. Hello. Look, you guys, we are back. We have Jamelle Ross and Tammy Heacock with us. And if you're just tuning in, we are going to be talking emergency preparedness, crisis management, and SPD, right? So, Jamelle, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us some history.
I don't do well at this, but good evening, everyone. I'm Jamelle Ross, and I've been in the peri-op healthcare industry for a long time, over 30 years, and I consider myself the fossil. I always refer to myself as that, but not in a negative connotation. Okay. Now I'm not, don't get it twisted. I say that I'm a fossil and that fossils have been around a long time and they've been been exposed to a lot of things, right? But if you study fossils, if you study them, you will learn so much about what has been and how you can be sustained, right? Right. So I love calling myself that because it's really a good thing. And so my entire goal for life is really to leave this earth empty. So whatever I have learned, I want to make sure I share that with any and everybody so we as an industry can grow and be better and be cohesive. That's
I
me.
love that. I like that, Fossil. I like that. I'm going to take that and use that one day. I feel like I have a lot more learning to do and growing to do, but I will remember that. Tammy, can you give us a little bit of your background, your history?
And Jamelle, of course, did not disappoint. I saw you with Sharon at HSPA as well. It was one of the productions that absolutely blew my mind. So, so excited to be joining you and Chimere today. The really great group. So, I'm Tammy Heacock. I would have never thought of a positive way to look at a fossil. So thank you for that nugget of information. I will be using that as well. I've been in the peri-op world since 1997. Started off in surgery and then transitioned into a little bit of intraoperative monitoring and then always a little bit of sterile processing here and there. So we've been around a long time. We've seen a lot, haven't we, Jamelle?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have.
All right, ladies. Well, look, let's go ahead and jump right into it. We are going to talk crisis management and emergency preparedness. Before we get started, I do want to just give a little bit of, because I like to do background and tie it and connect into a story, right? So before we get started, I want to take everybody all the way back to COVID, right? because that was a crucial time for everybody. And so when I thought about that in preparing for this episode, I said, man, just being a leader in sterile processing, like what was something that really stood out and something that I would not forget from that moment? And it was the shortage in PPE, because that caused a huge concern, especially in the reprocessing for sterile processing, and then the N95 mask. And so I think that in that moment, everybody was kind of just panicking. And so when I did some kind of research on that, one of the things that I wanted to point out and just make sure that I got this message out is that case check. So one of the things, they wrote an entire article, and one of the things that they said is this crisis revealed that SPD is not just a support function, it is essential, and that it directly impacts patient outcomes, staff safety, and the overall efficiency of hospital operations. And I feel like the pandemic was our spotlight. It was our time to shine and show people that, hey, we are here and that we are essential and that we are important when you talk about the chain or the circle of the operating room. So I want to just give that little bit of that tidbit of information, put that back out there for anybody who is listening, understand your role, understand your importance. If you are leaders, understand your SPD department, right? And then also, I would do a terrible injustice if I didn't let you guys know that that is how Knowledge or Nonsense was started. So that pandemic came about and there was a need for information. And so our producer, Sharon Combs, right, who ran this show, started for that reason. So I'm super excited to have this moment with both of you ladies today where we can just expand on what it looks like for crisis management. Now I talked my head off just a little bit. I'm sorry. Sharon, can you tell us in the world of sterile processing, what it looks like or some things that people can do when they're experiencing power outages?
Well, one thing is, I never thought I would say this, but now that I'm in Southwest Florida, it really depends on what your power outage is, right? A power outage in Central Illinois has a much different view than a power outage in Southwest Florida after a Category 5 hurricane, right? I don't refer to myself as a fossil, but I have been around since long before the days of instrument tracking systems, right? So I had carbon paper for count sheets, and we still used paper and pen to write down our sterilization logs and our indicator results and all of those things. So not having a tracking system or having limited power where we have to utilize power for just the quote unquote, what I view as essential equipment is much different than one of my team members today. So I don't constitute not being able to use SensaTrack as a disaster, but someone on my team and new to sterile processing, it would be disastrous for them, right? So just knowing your team and who's going to do well in what space, how long you're going to be without power, don't put somebody new to sterile processing into assembly if you can't utilize your computers for assembly, right? You want to put somebody that's a veteran tech that is comfortable getting out that binder of count sheets and ticking things off by hand. And just knowing your equipment. And, I always say for power outages, the nice thing about hurricanes is we know they're coming and we can plan for them. And typically we know how bad it's going to be and what areas are going to be impacted. Much different than like Central Illinois when it's an ice storm or tornado. You don't have much warning and you don't really know how long it's going to last. So work with plan ops and really find out, how long can your generator run? What equipment can you run on limited power, and develop your plan from there.
Yes. Jim, do you have any tips to add for us in that area?
I want to try to stay sticking with the power because you spoke about the power, but what is critical to any other question that we ask going forward and it is just with SPD overall, we have to understand, as you led in, Chimere, how critical and pivotal our services are to that facility. Okay. If we don't operate in that space, everything is going to be a disaster and can take you off your game.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Any and everything can take you off your game. So how we define crisis and an emergency situation, guess what? Life is going to be filled with those, whether they come today, next month, or 5 years from now. But the key is to be prepared. And so the power is more than just the electricity. It's the power we have here in planning and being prepared for whatever comes. So for me, it's being, we do ourselves this disjustice, I would like to say, in that we don't focus enough on, like you say, disaster preparedness in the department. We barely talk about safety, but disaster preparedness is super important, where we're training our staff that every day they're prepared for whatever. Okay, if the ceiling falls, we know what we're going to do. It's not a crisis for us. The event may have been a critical situation. The event may have been something unexpected, but guess what? We are resilient. And so we know we pivot. So with power, it's critical. I think we were kind of alluding to it earlier, is that it's critical to know what power sources we have, right? And I know, Chimere, you said you had an example, but I always like to put out there, we have been taught that, okay, critical equipment is going to be hooked up to a red outlet. Excuse my French, lies.
Utter complete lies.
Lies. Excuse me, anybody, but I got my receipts, okay? Because in building the department and doing repairs, you can have an individual that puts a red face plate on a plug that is not connected to the generator.
Yes.
100%.
So power goes out, generator kicks in, but that's none of your sterilizers, because we need to make sure that we understand those critical pieces of equipment that we have that are going to require power, that are going, and I say critical, meaning it's necessary for not only the operation within the department, but being able to support the services we provide and our customers. We need to identify what those critical things are. Yes. Guess what? You ain't got to have all your sterilizers working. We're in a crisis situation. So if I got one sterilizer, one washer, we good. But we cripple when we're saying everything isn't working. That's okay. We need to identify what's critical to allowing us to provide our services safely.
Yep.
Not only to us, but with the product that we present to our customers. So identifying those critical pieces of equipment, make sure they're connected to the generator. We always like to say, okay, they're doing the generator testing at 12:30, every other Friday. We're not there. We're not paying any attention. We don't even know if the sterilizer didn't kick back in. We don't know.
Yep.
And I think
we don't know.
One of those situations where I want to go back to, Jamelle, you were talking about the red plug. And my example of that was having to utilize it and then not understanding why it wasn't working. And so I thought, well, wait a minute, it's red. It's supposed to be working. Oh my God. And so let that, like you said, I have the receipts. Leaders, please, if you did not before, take this as your sign to make sure that your red plugs are actually connected to the generator, to the backup generator. Make sure that they are actually going to work for you in the event of emergency, because being in the emergency is when it's too late to find out that it's not an actual emergency plug.
And like Jamelle said, not everything has to be functional. For example, my office computer does not need plugged into a red outlet. In an emergency, I'm not going to be sitting at my office trying to use my computer.
Exactly. Right?
Why is it on a red plug?
Correct.
Jamelle, you hit on a lot of things that I want to make sure that I go back to as well. And actually, Tammy, I think this one was for you. You were talking about like the difference between using a tracking system and using paper. And so I can recall a time where, I'm going to give you guys, this example is crazy, but I was working at an institution some time ago, and our entire system went offline. The system of hospitals went offline, and they didn't have access to the tracking system. And for my location, I said, okay, well, we just pull out our count sheet book because we printed all of our count sheets. And so we just said, okay, look, I need you to start printing copies of these, and these. What are we going to be using today? What's our turnover items? Print those first. So we had a whole plan in place, and we just continued on business as usual. And for us, it was fine. And everybody's running around and they're trying to figure it out. And we're like, no, we're pretty good down here, and it's business as usual. And the crazy thing about it was our system went back up for everyone else. It was just a click of a button that somebody needed to come and do in our department. However, we were still running hours later. We didn't find out.
No.
Yeah, you didn't notice
until several hours after it was back up, because we're running business as usual. But that's because we were prepared ahead of time in the event that something happened. And so when it comes to tracking systems, I want to make sure that people caught that tool of pre-print your count sheets, right? Print some preference cards for those emergency case cards so that you have something that you can use in situations like that when your tracking system is down.
And Chimere, you're right. The same thing happened here. I have 4 acute care hospitals, 3 surgery centers, and an offsite. And first time I had just started the job, my first trip back home to visit friends and family I hadn't seen in over a year, and got off the airplane in Chicago, and my phone started ringing, and I thought, oh boy, what's going on? Our tracking system had went down, and it was unreal to me. And this is why this hits my heart. We didn't have an instrument tracking downtime plan. We had an Epic downtime plan. Nobody knew how to do paper logging. They wanted to just stop sterilizing everything because we didn't have a tracking system. I'm like, we're STD. We can't stop, right? Are there still surgeries scheduled? Are we still bringing patients in? Are we still seeing traumas? Then we're still moving, so that made us, develop a plan, printing count sheets, how do you document that and stay compliant? All of those things. But the red plug thing, though, like Jamelle said earlier, you don't wait until you're in it to go, oh my gosh, why are the red plugs not working? But what do we do to make sure the plugs are working? That's when you partner with your plan ops buddies and say, hey, let's do a generator test on Friday at 10 a.m.
Thank you. That's what I'm saying.
When everyone's here. And then I can call Jamelle and say, hey, you know what? Sterilizer number 2 did not kick back on when the generator activated. That red plug is not working. So preparing for war in times of peace will make you a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. I love that.
So your plan, you've got to engage plan ops. Just like during COVID, we didn't know all of the people that were dependent on us and that we were so dependent on until we were in it. And we don't want to go through that again.
Yes, I do want to say shout out to Kyrie. That was a great question. Thank you, ma'am. I also want to make sure that we take it back. You said something that was great, Jamelle, about safety planning, and do people understand, what your safety plan is at your facility? I have another story. Look, when I'm 21 years in this thing, I got a bunch of stories. Just like you guys, I'm sure you have a million stories. There's a time I was at a institution, and I came in and just learning the institution myself, realized that the staff did not know what the fire safety plan was. They weren't clear on what the exit route was. They weren't clear on what race was, what pass was, and those kind of things. And I'm like, oh no, we have to get our plan in place. What is our exit route? What is our plan? Where are we meeting at? Who understands it? So we had to go back and educate the staff, because I said, it's no good for us to have these fire extinguishers everywhere and nobody knows how to use them. right?
Right.
There's those kind of things when you're leaders that you want to make sure when you're coming into an area, or just periodically do those training sessions with your staff to make sure that they understand when emergencies come, what are we doing? Who's on
Well,
first, who's on second, who's on third, right?
right. And I don't want to keep beating up on the red plugs, but they're kind of like the fire extinguishers. Do we ever look at the fire extinguisher and make sure it's functional? No, because that's someone else's department, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what happens if we can't take care of our department on our own?
Mm-hmm.
We still have a little bit of accountability in that as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Look, guys, I'm going to let us take a little bit of break, allow some more people to get in, like, subscribe, and we will be right back with Tammy Heacock and Jamelle Ross, and we are talking emergency preparedness and crisis management. We'll be back. Hello, and welcome back to anyone who is joining in. I am your host, CeCe Curry, and I am here with Jamelle Ross and Tammy Heacock, and we are talking emergency preparedness and how to deal with crisis management in sterile processing, or really in any environment, right, guys? I do want to take a moment and say thank you to anyone who has joined in. We appreciate you for coming in and showing us some support. I see we have Kyrie, we have Sharon, LaWayne, Lee, Lila. I got it this time, girl. Lila and Danny, thank you guys so much for showing your support. All right. So, Jamelle, this one's for you. Can you give us some tips on on the first 3 actions a SPD leader should take when in a crisis? The first 3 things that they should do.
Okay, when we're in a crisis, I want to make sure, okay. It kind of varies because our goal here tonight is to make sure that it is crisis management and not crisis response.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the goal. We want to get to where we're managing the event and not just trying to say, okay, what are we going to do? So crisis management. But number one, the biggest thing is really defining, which is really critical. We're so quick to just do stuff that we're really not knowing what we're affecting. But we really needed to define what our goal and our objective is going to be in that thing. Okay, so I know we always talk about safety. We want to make sure we secure the environment and make sure we know that everyone is safe. Everyone knows that in a safety environment. But when there's a crisis, we need to define what is our role. What are we going to be required to do? So that if it's a disaster where everything's shut down, shut off, and we're not going to be doing surgery, I'm not going to put as a priority getting everything through the sterilizer. So you need to set a priority plan, and that comes from defining what the roles of that department, the individual, and the processes are to do. Because a lot of times we may not be able to run the sterilizer, but we can get soil instruments through the washer and clean. So you got to define what the goal is. Communicating with your customers, or most facilities will have a command center. But if not, you need to make sure you are aware that that facility has a command center. And guess what? You better, leaders, you need a seat at that table.
Absolutely.
You have to have a seat at the table, because there are conversations about what ICU is going to do and what the OR is going to do, but no one at the table is talking about the department that is going to be responsible for helping support some of the things that they're critically having to do, from the neonatal things that they're having to do for brand new babies, for labor and delivery. They're still going to be delivering and doing C-sections because they can't not do them. There's some emergency things that will be coming through the emergency room. We have to have a seat at that table to be able to know what the hospital is going to do, so we'll know how to stage what we're going to do in response to our customers' needs. So I don't know if I said 3, I don't know if I said 4, but then communicating. So not only are we providing communication to the customers, but we got to communicate within our team. We got to communicate with our team. Listen, there are no martyrs in a disaster or in a critical environment. Everybody is the same. If your team is just as informed as you are, then things begin to click. But if everybody's got to find you for you to tell everybody what to do because you want to be such a smarty pants and everybody come to you and you're trying to create a kingdom and a fiefdom, it's crippling everybody and someone could get hurt.
Yes.
So pull everybody around and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. You do this, you do this, you do this. If you have a problem, come find me. And everybody needs to be a part of the solution. Everybody needs to be a part of the solution and needs to know what the plan is so that we can do. So know what the problem is, know what your priorities are, what is expected of you, and then communicate that to your team so that it can be done.
Yes, absolutely. I see Juan says chemical inventory and its location is crucial, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a lot of elements that we could go down. We haven't even begun to talk about.
Yes.
Beyond just power and all of that.
Yes.
Because a lot of that happens. That's why I say disaster management. We're supposed to be prepared ahead of time. So It's not going to be a big lift for me to know I'm going to need pallets of water. Right. How many of y'all don't even, I have met too many SPD managers that know nothing about having pallets of water as a backup. If the water mains break and everything else, and you're not going to get any water, we still have to decontaminate instruments at some type of level that are used.
Absolutely.
Yes. We have no sterile water. We have nothing because we've never communicated to the leadership that that's a critical resource that we always need to have available for us, because they'll get extra water for dialysis and everywhere else, and we don't have it.
And you're absolutely right. Hey, Arlene, I see that you have joined in. I see Annetta. I saw you. Hello. We had a question. Oh, actually, Kyrie said, hello, SPD has to have a seat at the table. I see it says, can either of you share what's an example of management and what's an example of a response? So can one of you ladies take that question on, the example of crisis management and then the example of a response for that? Thank you for putting that up on the screen.
Well, I think, Bill had a question too that I think rolls into this. Should we develop a multidisciplinary team? And as Jamelle said, absolutely. So, we all have stories. Jamelle's right. So pallets and pallets and pallets of water get delivered to a dock, and it gets farmed out to dialysis, and it gets farmed out to ICU. And then, there's drinking water, bottles of water that we're giving to patients and our team members. Nobody's thinking sterile processing if we didn't form preemptively, that's management, preemptively saying, I want to be at the command center. If I can't be at the command center because I have to be with my team, how do I communicate with the command center? How do I take my seat at that table to become part of that multidisciplinary team so that you know where the water is going, how much is going to be available, and how they're going to get it to you?
Absolutely. I think I want to...
An example of a response is calling the command center after the hurricane or whatever storm has hit and saying, hey, I don't have any water. We've got all these instruments down that are bloody and full of bioburden. What the heck are you going to do to help us? And we didn't plan. That is a crisis response.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. The management allows you to be aware as best as possible, but of what actions you can take, and you're prepared for that. And so then when it does hit, you are able to methodically go through those stages to be able to respond. But you don't want to just have a critical response where this hits and you say, okay, and we're just piecemealing it together. But management allows you to have, like you say, the downtime folder that has a copy of all of the count sheets. We already know that. It's there. We review that, twice a year with the staff, and so they know that is there, and it's updated as best as possible. So and then you're managing how you're going to respond to whatever else, but you just want to make sure you have to manage what's going on, or you will lose your mind.
Absolutely.
And then you will have a team members that don't want to participate and they don't want to respond.
Absolutely.
Let's be real, because they don't have any confidence.
Right.
That's it. That is it.
And honestly, they're, devil's advocate here. They're trying to keep themselves, their family safe.
Exactly.
So if I'm at home when this event takes place and Tammy's calling me and saying, hey, I'm going to need you to report in tomorrow, and I'm not coming, maybe half my roof is gone because we've just went through a tornado, and I've got grandma and mom and everybody else huddled at my house, keep everyone happy, healthy, and whole as can be, because I've done my emergency management. But that's where Jamelle is right. We have to have that plan in place where Team A is there. We can form full operations. Then Team B fluidly slides in once we're fully operational and everybody keeps going. And if you plan in advance for that, that team member that you're calling in that time of crisis and saying, hey, we anticipate Team B reporting back to work Thursday at 1 p.m.
Right.
They have Tuesday and Wednesday to manage their plan and come help you out on Thursday.
And let me tell you guys, when it comes to, I actually just had this conversation not too long ago. We were talking crucial conversations just in our own leadership group. And I'm so happy that you guys brought this up about having the plan and then understanding what that is, because one of the things that I said to the team was educate yourself, pour into yourself, right? And so this is something that is really critical when you're talking about crisis management, because in any situation, if your team is coming to you, and you never have the answers, they are going to lose trust. And it is so important that when it comes to crisis management, that you educate yourself as much as possible, that you take your seat at those tables, that you are deep diving instead of running away, because your staff are going to come to you. And the more that you don't have the answers, the more you seem unclear, the more you seem confused, the more they're going to be confused, the more they're going to lose trust, the more they are not going to be willing and ready to jump in the way that you are going to need them to in those moments of crisis. One, I saw you said emergency preparedness is just like quality improvement. It's continuous. Absolutely. This is not just a one and done situation. This is something that you continuously plan for with your team so that when these situations occur, you're not scrambling, right?
Right.
Sharon says, are there any SPD emergency drills, and how is the time found for that? You have to make the time.
Yeah. Like Juan said, it's like quality. Yeah. It's like Juan said, it's like quality improvement, right? Remember when we implemented quality check stations for those troubled trays, and all of our team members came to us and said, we're never going to be able to get this done. It takes too much time and blah, blah, blah. We get it done every day, right? There's quality audits happening on a daily. So if you can make the time, we have fire drills so that we don't get in that situation where I don't know where to go. I don't know which hallway to go, which stairwell. I'm trapped in this big building. You have to make the time for it. Again, just because this whole hurricane preparedness is new for me, I found it fascinating how well we really do plan for something that can go from a one-day event to a 3-week-long event.
Oh, yes.
And the only way you plan for that is continually practice it and prepare for it. And like you said, continuously touching base with your team. You understand you signed up for Team A. You understand that means that you're staying the night with me at the command center at the offsite so that we can start farming out all these instruments to all of our other campuses, and sometimes campuses outside of our cities.
Absolutely. But
if you don't communicate that out to the team, they're scared. They don't know, and they're losing trust in you by the minute, and you will not get it back.
By the minute.
By
And
the
it's
minute.
so hard. Once the trust is lost, once they have no idea where the ship is going, it is so hard to gain that trust back, to regain control of the wheel, especially when you're in a crisis situation. Especially, let me say that again for the people in the back, especially when you're in a crisis situation. I will admit to you guys, I didn't even realize what I want to consider crisis, right, for sterile processing until we started the show and we started talking. And I thought, man, I've been in several. When we're talking about not having water, when we're talking about not having power, when we're talking about not having sterilizers, when we're like, I've been in several actually. And so
Right.
how did that go and how did we deal with that? And you learn from it every single time, especially in how to be better, right? So you can have that plan and maybe that plan doesn't go exactly the way that you thought. So you're also needing to leaders, especially take notes in the moment. Remember the things that didn't go well and then make sure that you're meeting and having follow up after that so that the next time this occurs, we can do better. Right. I want to take a moment to take a short break, you guys, and we will be right back with Jamelle Ross and Tammy Heacock talking emergency preparedness and crisis management. Ooh, that was super awesome. Shameless plug time, you guys. That is a clip for the GSPA 2025 annual conference. So we are doing a cruise conference, if you did not know, and we are going to be offering 6 CEUs for this conference. It is also a vendor fair. We still have slots open for vendors as well as guests. So please go ahead, sign up, reach out to us. If you need more information, our email is gspachapter@gmail.com, and someone will send you that information to be able to participate. It is going to be huge, you guys, and it is the first ever event. So shameless plug for me. Right? Yay. If you are just tuning in, I do want to let you guys know I am here with Tammy Heacock and Jamelle Ross, and we have been talking about the top 3 things that leaders can do in crisis management, as well as what to do when your tracking systems are down, when you have down power. But don't worry, don't fret. At the end of the show, I'm going to give you a recap of all of those tools to make sure that you have what you need before we go. All right. Thank you guys for tuning in. Annetta, I see you. She jumped right in there with a question. It says, using your cascade immediately to see who can respond, who is safe but cannot respond, and who needs help. Absolutely. When it comes to emergency, especially this looks like something for evacuations. Oh my gosh, I cannot stress to you guys how important it is to make sure that your team knows where your rally points are.
Yes.
Can we just take a moment to talk about evacuations?
And most definitely important, but I was not here for the big hurricane they call Ian. Came 2 weeks after, but I had a lot of friends here and some of them that are listening. And one of the biggest things that concerned me was the lack of compassion from leadership on things that these, they didn't have power for weeks. And sometimes it wasn't safe to get down that, even if you are team B. And it wasn't safe, like Meta said, but there were no cell phones. There was no internet. There was no electricity. How is Tammy Heacock supposed to let you know, hey, I'm team B, but I can't get there? And what is your plan for that? And then when they do finally get a hold of you and say, hey, I'm on 75 right now, there's no way I can get there by 2 o'clock. Your response should not be, I don't care, you're team B, you need to be here. And that was responses that were given to people. And that is not right.
Yeah. And we have to plan for things like that. Here we have snow, right? And so in Atlanta, it doesn't snow very much, ever at all. And when it does, and I'm talking like something, and I'm doing this because I'm from Michigan, so I can have snow to my ankles, and I'm still going to work, and it's a regular day. Here, you could have 3 inches of snow, and it is an emergency. It is a state emergency. And so you have to plan for those things. And then I think that's the difference in what we talked about a little bit earlier, where you ladies talked about the difference between management and response. If you know that these are some things, and like you talked about the hurricane and stuff like that, if you know that these are some things that you're going to encounter, let's plan for that. Right? Let's plan for what that will look like in the future, because remember, you guys, we're talking about management. So we don't want you to get in a situation where you're at the back end. We want you to put those plans in place. Talk with your teams, right? Talk with your leaders. Find out, what are your evacuation plans, right? What does the policy say? Talk with your staff. Set up those team A, team B, team C, etc. Talk about, okay, who's going to stay over, what that overtime looks like, what can we offer you for when you do stay over. So make sure that you guys talk about those things. Miss Jamelle, I got another one for you. Can you just tell us a little bit about equipment, supplies, and backup systems, and just some tools or tips or anything that you may know of, have experienced on how leaders can check and make sure that they have backup plans in place when we have those equipment issues or tracking system, backup system supplies.
Well, as we had stated, it all boils down to identifying your critical needs. So you're going to need to have power to something. All right. So that's why we were saying you need to know the critical pieces of equipment that have to exist, not only just for the department to function, but in order for us to support the facility in some way, shape, or form. So that's why you identify that, and you meet with the leadership and with facilities and saying, hey, I need to make sure I have at least one washer, one sterilizer that is connected to I mean, it's great to have the cart washer, but I'm here to hurt somebody's feelings. It does not have to be on the emergency plan. All right. So you can have at least one washer. You want to have at least one sterilizer. And if at all possible, if you're using any type of plasma, you want to have one of those to be hooked up to the emergency generator. And you can have one, hear me clearly, one computer.
Right.
Yes.
Not all of them. But if you're critically thinking, if your facility can afford to have the entire department hooked up there, God bless you.
Right.
I doubt that that's really the case. They just may make you think that. But at least you need to identify the critical pieces. Got to have this, got to have, and then we can support any critical functions that have to, because understand, we're not trying to function fully.
Right.
We're not trying to function fully. So critical decision, critical equipment, critical decisions, critical function. So we want to be able to provide those critical things that need to be done. Identify the critical equipment. Identify your critical staffing that you need to have. You got to have at least 2 or 3 people there. And if they can't do it, get somebody else. But, you got to have your critical plans identified, such as we said, the downtime book. And the downtime book has more than just the count sheets in there. It tells you what to do. If this, then. If this, then. Those, you have to do that. Take the time, leaders, to just write a page a day. Just think outside of the box. What if and it doesn't have to be an external disaster. And I've done a presentation several times on this, where I'm saying you have external natural disasters, but there are also internal disasters that and critical things that happen within the facility that we have to respond to that make us go into crisis mode.
100%.
Your steam, the steam generator died, or the boiler is gone, it's dead. You have no more boilers. The boiler's been there since before I was born in the early 1900s. And they did not invest any money in trying to get it up to date.
Yes.
So what do you do? Those are internal. That's not external.
Correct.
You have to prepare for the internal. You're going down the hall that goes up to the operating room, and the ceiling caves in, and there's water everywhere. There's water intrusion in the sterile sterile storage area.
Yes.
You have to go into emergency. You have to go into that crisis mode. What do you do there? Get out whatever you can, but then you got to prepare. How are we going to get this facility back up to functioning? And guess what? No, the answer isn't. The reason us and having a seat at the table doesn't mean that we have to work all night, every night to get everything done. No, we're going to be realistic. We have to be true, because one of the things is we still have regulatory guidelines in which that govern our processes and what we do. I love you and all. Yes, I do. I have much respect for you, and I love the community that we serve. But what we provide is sterility assurance. We don't provide nothing else. And therefore, we have to follow the regulated processes to be able to provide the sterility assurance to be able to service our customer. Y'all better write that down.
Yes. Yes.
Amen.
Right.
So that's what I'm saying. There are a lot of critical elements that we have to take the time, leaders, to do. We really do. And then part of that thing also, Chimere and audience, is that we have to take the time. It doesn't mean it has to be anything formal. I love doing this when I'm doing my huddles. I'll say like, Chimere, we're having our huddle, like these are the 3 of us. And I'll say, they know I'm really outside of the box. I'll say, Tammy, you're it. And they'll go, what does that mean? That means there is a critical piece of equipment that you need to identify. So I said, Tammy, you're it. You need to go and touch what piece of equipment is a critical piece of equipment that's attached to the generator. That way I know you're engaged and you know.
I love that. That's amazing.
Right? Can we get a clap for that? I love it.
Little things like that. And then it makes it fun learning.
Yep.
Then you own it. Those types of things. If this goes down, what do? I'll just throw out a little question like that. And they're going, oh, man. Yeah. I said, but for real, if this happens, what do you do? Because we don't want them to be just reliant on us. We want to train them to make, and not train them, but expose people and give them the tools. Adults that have a real full-time job, that get paid to do the job. We need to enable them to make these critical thinking skills. Yeah, they need to make those critical thought and decisions without waiting, without harming themselves or causing harm to someone else. So introduce those little things. It can be just a 2-minute blip every day at huddle, or twice a week, or once a week. It doesn't have to be the in-service day when everybody half sleepy trying to eat their biscuits and drink coffee and they rolling their eyes. Talking about we're going to have to work late today. No. So those critical elements are, the part of the planning is for anything that's going to cause a shift, causing us to pivot that doesn't go our normal function that we would like for it to say. So like you were saying, Juan, and I thank you, we also have to look at alternative ways
Right.
in which to sterilize items.
Yeah.
So if the plasma thing isn't working, then there are certain instruments and certain modalities that will allow you to sterilize via the plasma. Certain instruments, you may have to use that. That should be an emergency response, not an
Yeah.
everyday response now.
Right. And you want to make sure that you continue to be that you don't fall out of compliance, right? And so you
That
said
is so
a little bit
critical.
about compliance earlier. And so, Tammy, can you just give us some tips on how to make sure that we remain in compliance during emergencies, right?
So Jamelle and Juan both hit on that. Like, right, what happens when that boiler goes down, that is older than the hills? It's never been maintained. We just always say, hey, the steam works. We've got a sterilizer. We're good to go, right? And I have found in working for larger systems, the answer is always, we'll move it to another site and they'll sterilize it. That's always been our plan, right? What happens when you can't get it to another site? What happens when you can get it to that site, but they cannot get it back to you and stay compliant, right? So you do have to look at those alternative sterilization methods, but it can't be willy-nilly, right? And your team has to understand why I have this tray of pure stainless steel instruments with no lumens in them, why it is okay and safe and still within regulatory compliance to go into a SteriAd or a vPro machine. And they need to know that before it happens. Like, it's okay to put an Army Navy in there, and why it's okay. When your ceiling falls down, Jamelle, it's so funny that you said that, because that literally just happened at one of my sites like 6 months ago. As they're wheeling a patient, the ceiling caves in. Okay. We know there's going to be extensive work going on real close to sterile storage. Fortunately, it wasn't in sterile storage, but we know how it goes, right? The leak may have been here, but now we've located it way down.
Way down, yeah.
And that is in sterile storage, right? So we need to shut down the HVAC, and we need to shut off the water, and it may be 2 or 3 days. So we're going to bring in portable air conditioners. Everything's going to be okay. No, it is not. How do you stay compliant during something like that? So again, management. You know that if you have one of those, if this, then plans, if your ceiling caves in, and you don't have to be that specific, you could say, if you're unable to maintain temperature or humidity for more than X amount of hours, right? Because that's your policy and that's your management plan. You shut down OR 21, and that's where you store your critical sets. Again, knowing we cannot move 1,800 sets somewhere, we're going to be reprocessing something. But probably Dr. Curry's instrument, his special rat tooth Adson that has like a pink thing on the bottom of it, we're probably not going to take the time to worry about keeping it within regulatory compliance, right? We're going to move all those critical trauma, one-of-a-kind sets that we absolutely have to save lives into that alternative storage area.
And that goes back to
and documenting
earlier about making sure that you identify your priority items.
Exactly. Right? You have to.
That comes into place. We are just
right
7:55, guys. So I want to make sure. I know the time went so fast, you guys. But that's what happens when you're having good conversation. I want to make sure that we do a recap, and then that we have a chance for you guys to let everybody know where you are. So if you're just tuning in, when we talk about emergency preparedness and how to prepare for crisis management, we talked about power outages, right? Making sure that you identify what those plugs are, what they service. Are your red plugs actually emergency plugs, right? Get with your engineering team and make sure that or your ops team, right? And make sure that those plugs work. printing out count sheets ahead of time so that if you have issues with power failures, you don't go down. Understanding what processes you can use for documenting sterilization.
Yes.
Most importantly, be prepared ahead of time. Don't be reactive, be proactive in these situations. Define your roles ahead of time. Understand what your staff are going to be doing. Understand the expectations for your department, as well as what your priorities are going to be beforehand. Communicate with your team and your leaders. Understand where that command center is going to be and make sure that you take your seat at the table, you guys. Understand the difference between management and response, right? Management is going to be making sure that you have those plans in a proactive stance.
Correct.
Response is going to be getting into the situation, and now you're looking for what the solutions are, what the plan is, etc. Remember, this was awesome. If this, then. If this, then. Right? So make sure that you understand that when you guys are going back after you see this and say, well, wait a minute, and you're reviewing your department. If this, then what? Understand your equipment. And so in this last bit of conversation, we talked a little bit more about equipment, and my note was understand your equipment, what it supplies, and then what it services, so that you can better understand what you need to do in a crisis. So if you have a water system and you understand that your water system flows to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then when you don't have any water, then you know, okay, I need to make sure that I plan to get water to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or at least 1, 2, and 3, right? Those kind of situations. Thank you guys so much for all of this. And I hope I captured everything. And I hope everyone who is watching got something from this episode. You guys, can you tell us where the people can find you? Jamelle, can you tell us where the people can find you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn. I'm responsive. Just find me on Jamelle Ross on LinkedIn. And thank you for having me. This has been exciting and a pleasure. And I'm praying that we did a little bit of justice and we kind of stoked the fire within everyone to do better with regards to planning for disasters, emergencies, and critical responses.
Yes, yes. Tammy, can you tell the people where they can find you?
I am on LinkedIn as well, and you can also find me at the HSPA conference in Louisville this year. I'll be presenting on OR SPD collaboration. I would love to see everyone there.
Yes, that's going to be awesome. Well, Jamelle and Tammy, it was awesome. I'm so happy that you guys did the show today, and thank you so much for just taking out the time to talk with us today about being prepared in crisis management. Until next time, you guys, it was so nice to have you. We will see you next week, same place, same time.
Thank you. Everyone.
In a world overflowing with noise, are you truly being heard? Or better yet, are you truly listening? Kenneth Campbell, industry author and expert in sterilization, is back with his latest book, Learn to Listen, So Others Are Willing to Talk. This book isn't just about hearing words. It's about understanding, connecting, and building trust. Whether you're leading a team, navigating relationships, or simply striving for better conversations, these practical strategies will transform the way you communicate. Imagine a world where every conversation leads to deeper connections, resolved conflicts, and greater influence. It's possible when you learn to listen. Are you ready to elevate your communication and create meaningful relationships? Learn to listen, so others are willing to talk. Available now.